Two guys in the dark.
Imagine late 2006, the goth spot outside of the local high schools. Teenagers are smoking, chatting, and being boring goths. One of them is really blonde. Oh wait, that's me. I'm there with my closest friend, A, J, and K. It's lunch hour. 10th grade had just started. And even though we were just too cool to express any actual emotions about anything, we were pretty excited. Some of our friends had graduated in June, but would still come visit occasionally. Most of the time, this was pretty great. I have trouble recognizing most faces, and I always have. So one day when I thought someone that I knew had walked up to visit, I waltzed over to just say hello. Only it wasn't that friend. No, this was somebody new. Somebody that I have never met. The smell of this boy. Sweet Jesus, the smell. This particular stank I was not recognized by, and quickly realized my mistake. He thought that it was funny, and asked if I had mistaken him for somebody else. I laughed at it, said, "Yeah, sorry. I thought that you were some generic-looking motherfucker. I have wicked face blindness." My friend Kay comes over to us and says, "Oh, do you happen to know HP? I wasn't sure if you had met or not." I had begun responding to her, saying that no, actually I'd just mistaken him for somebody when he just cut me off. No, this was the first time she and I have ever met. I shit you not. He said fucking yar. I wasn't quite sure what to do about this, so I just said nothing. HP then turned to me and bowed. I be HP, but everybody calls me Ducky. But you can call me whatever you want. And then he winks at me. Ducky, I ask. Like from 16 Candles? I love Molly Ringwald movies, so I know them all. For some context, if you're not familiar with this particular movie, Ducky's not exactly a character that you'd want to share a moniker with. He was basically the best friend of the main character, for whom he was carrying a torch for ages. He was a little mopey, because he never grew a hair and told the main character how he felt about her. You get the hint, pretty much. You can pretty much fill in the blanks. If not, just look into it, and then watch that movie. It's a really good one, even if it's outdated. Some people find it problematic, so view at your own discretion. Anyways, yes, I'm Ducky, he beamed at me. I guess I picked that nickname up because I always fell in love with girls that I can't have. My friend Kay is one of those people who just rolled her eyes so hard that you could almost hear and feel it, as if you're standing close enough to her. HP didn't seem to notice, but I sure did. I turned to her, to see an annoyed smirk on her face, as she looked me directly in the eye, took me by my hand, then said, "Come with me to my locker. The bell's going to ring anyways." Bye, HP, and off we went. I thought that was strange, because we had at least another 10 minutes before the first bell was set. "He's an interesting one, eh?" I said. "You should stay away from him." Kay had replied to me, and almost emotionlessly, "What? Why? He's not a nice guy, not as nice as he comes off. He's fine to hang around, I guess, if there are people around. Just don't put yourself in a position where you will be alone with him." Me and Kay are the kind of people that like to look you directly in the eye when we speak to you, regardless of how serious the subject of conversation might be. But this was an intense eye contact. My stomach decided to roll a little bit at what crossed my mind. "Kay, I hope you're not telling me that he's hurt you," I say, holding her hand in mine. "No," she responded to my relief. "Nothing like that. But people have said some things about him that I don't like. Just keep that in mind. A lot of rumors are bullshit, but some have a grain of truth right behind them." A few weeks later, my friend A and I were sitting outside in the sun. 10th grade was the first year that we had spares, and we just so happened to have a spare for last period every Thursday. We were talking about the classes that we had, talking about what we would do with our exciting new slots of free time, when suddenly, a really nasty, unwashed pirate ship docked up. I'm joking, but HP did walk up to where we were sitting. He greeted us with, "Ahoy, ladies! What are you two delicate creatures doing out here on such a wonderful day?" I didn't know what cringe felt like until that moment. "Hello, HP," I replied. "We're not doing a whole lot. Just relaxing on some spare time." "Who the hell is this?" asked A. Ever honest and filterless. "Sorry, A. This happens to be HP. This is A," I told them both. He bowed to her, as he had to me when we first met. She straight up just laughed at him. He took this as a compliment, and emboldened himself to ask, "You ladies want to get corrupted?" We looked at each other really weirdly, and A laughed and blurted out, "Yeah, sure. Let's go do that." "All right then," he announced. "Follow me, my fair maidens, and I will take you on an adventure." I wasn't alone, and A was and still is a friend that I will always feel safe with. She had convinced me to start coming to kickboxing and Muay Thai with her. This was still a mistake, though. We must have walked with him for about 45 minutes before we arrived at the place that he had called home, the upstairs portion of a small, long but shut-down tattoo shop with "Rat" in the name. We walked in, and an older guy with long hair decided to greet us. "Hi there, girls. You look a little bit young. Do you have any IDs?" he asked us. "They're not here for tattoos. They're here with me," he boasted. "We're going to hang out upstairs," as he led us towards an ancient-looking staircase. I had no tattoos at this point, but still knew that this was not a place that I would want to come for one. This house looked like it was about to fall apart in every which way. When we went upstairs, it looked exactly how you would imagine the living quarters of a 19-year-old guy who fancied himself to be a pirate would look like. Not particularly dirty, but definitely not clean. Musty from the lack of insulation in the walls of the old house. He opened up the windows and welcomed into his little living space. "Have you guys ever smoked weed?" he asked, as he was rolling up a joint. "I have," replied A. I shook my head, embarrassed that I was the only one that had never tried it. He smirked at me. "Well, today's the day that you pop your cherry for that." He laughed loudly at his stupid joke, while A and I sat there silently. The next thing he said kind of sounded a little supportive, but also not threatening. He told me that I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about weed and how to avoid conflict while using it. He was rather coming off as condescending when he had said this. You want to avoid smoking a joint with anybody that you think might get into a fight with you, because pot makes people just as aggressive as alcohol, if not more. HP tried to explain some things to us that just didn't quite sound right. Later on turned out to be complete and utter bullshit. I guess he was just trying to make himself sound cool and smart and experienced in some ways. He sparked the thing, passed it to A, who took a decent-sized pull, and then she passed it to me. "Make sure you don't singe your hair on it," she said, the first helpful suggestion that was shared since we had arrived here. I took a tiny puff, and was surprised when I didn't hack my lungs out like some people do in the movies when they try to smoke it for the very first time. The little joint made its rounds a couple more times. I didn't think that it was affecting me at all, until A had tapped me on the shoulder, then asked me if I was good. I suddenly realized how hard it had hit me. He had been talking this whole time, and I just tuned him out. She was trying really hard not to laugh at me, but wasn't doing a very good job at it. HP then leaned over, really close, trying to sound seductive. I guess asked, "So, does this stuff make you wet?" "Sorry, what?" I asked him. He giggled and said, "I said, are you high yet?" "And what did you think I said?" "I don't even remember now," I replied, trying and failing to stifle my own lighter. He spent a lot of time trying to convince us that he was this intellectual, deep-thinking person who didn't believe in things like car culture and how communism was just better all the way around. We were learning about how it had destroyed numerous countries and millions of lives. We kept that we were in AP history to ourselves. He then started to ask us sneaky, invasive questions, getting more and more frustrated the more the questions, and the more the remarks went over our heads as well. We were high. Eventually, I had pulled out our emergency bail protocol for when we really wanted to get out of a social situation. I forgot. We both have to work tonight. We better get going, or we will be late for work. This was a line that she said that turned us both into Oscar-winning actresses who hated social interaction. You're right. I still have to go home, and I have to grab my uniform, I replied, grabbing my backpack right off of the floor. HP didn't like this and suggested that we were way too high, and that we both call in sick so that we could stay and hang out longer, so that he could take care of us. Never stopped getting ready to leave, getting my stuff together, all while saying that we were sorry, but my parents would kick my ass if I happened to skip any work tonight. A and I left, much to HP's disapproval. We were still working our first jobs at different fast food restaurants, but neither of us actually worked that night. We just went back to my house, decided to eat out of the fridge, and then watch some cartoons. The walk there was pretty fun, and we slept like babies that same night. The next day, A and I had almost forgotten about everything until we had saw each other, and then we started laughing, trying to remember what exactly had happened. Our friend Jay had came up to us saying someone was looking for us. When we asked who it was, he just shrugged and responded, I really don't know. Some Jack Sparrow looking motherfucker. Sure smells how Jack Sparrow would probably smell too. He got that months at sea stank kind of smell. Jay has a way with words, and he's one of the best friends that I've ever had. Love him to death. Imagine the cutest puppy that you've ever seen, dressed as a goth with spiky collar, black eyeliner, and a grumpy face. That was him. Jay, A, and I both decided to go say hi, a move that I regret now. We made our way outside, still having time before the bell rang to see that smelly motherfucker. First period hadn't even started yet, and he was trying to convince us to just skip again. We didn't skip yesterday. We were on our spare. A had explained all of this to him before. He then started to persuade us. Well, you should skip today. Come back to my place once again. No matter how many times we told him that we weren't going to today, he just wouldn't accept it. Soon he got really mad, and then he stormed off. Jay asked me what the hell was all this about, so we both told him about what had happened. Wow, that's a creeper, Jay replied. Why the hell does he go by Ducky anyways? Does he mean from the Molly Ringwald movie? That guy was such a chode. I shrugged and then replied, he says it's just a nickname that he was given a while back, and has been trying to get rid of it. I have no idea where it specifically came from. One of our older friends, who had far more run-ins with HP, had overheard all of this and laughed. Oh my god, this is really what he told you? You want to know where HP really got his nickname Ducky from? He decided that he would give it to himself. Now he acts like someone else gave it to him. Hell if I know why. But it's sort of sad, and also pretty funny. We didn't refer to him as Ducky ever again, because we weren't sure if we were humoring him or not. And even in high school, we didn't want to encourage that attention-hungry bullshit from him. I would continue seeing him here and there, over time. Never really thought much about it. We never went back to his place ever again, because frankly, the smell was just too much, and it was definitely a bad idea. He never stopped trying to get us to come back with him, and he always failed at it too. As all the years went on, he really zeroed in on me and would ask me to just go back on my own. Keep in mind at what Kay had told me, and I always declined him. Since I was a teenager, I was a master at giving lame excuses for why I just couldn't do anything. As I got older, he would ask me out on what I guess he thought were dates, walking around downtown at night, smoking weed in dangerous places, trespassing, sneaking out at night, things like that. I always declined, and he always acted like a bit of a piss baby about it. One day I had changed up her signature look to something pretty different. I guess he didn't really recognize her, because he walked right up beside her while looking directly at me, put his arm around her shoulder, and asked, "Who is your cute friend?" A had plucked his hand off of her shoulder, like one would pluck their dog's poops from the ground in a little bag, and said, "Oh, we have met before. You wanted to corrupt us, remember now?" His face turned white as a sheet. "Oh," he stammered, "it's you. I didn't recognize you." She rolled her eyes at him and laughed at his discomfort. Every interaction we had with him was pretty odd. After this one, A told me something that really scared me. Without a shred of doubt in her tone, she told me that I should avoid him from now on. "Why is that?" I asked, already pretty uncomfortable. We had sat down, and she told me rumor has it that he does what he did with us, with other girls, and then he tries to sleep with them. I wasn't sure what she had meant. Well, yeah, I imagine he does that with older girls. Everybody at or around this school knows that you're a lesbian, so I don't think that he's going to bother you. It was true. A was one of the first girls to really come out as a lesbian at our school, and in our age group in general. No, it hasn't stopped him. Some guys hear lesbian and think, oh, that's a challenge. Anyway, it's not me that he's after. She told me that it was me. I was uninterested in him in that way, so I just shrugged at this suggestion. You don't have to worry about me. He's not my type. A's face turned a bit grim when she added, that's apparently not something that he lets get into his way. I remember what Kay had told me previously. Kay said not to be alone with him, and this related to that. A took a deep breath, and then she let out a sigh. The rumor is that he gets girls stoned off their asses until they're out of it to process what is going on, or they pass out. Then he does things to them. That made my hair on the back of my neck just stand straight up. But he seems like such a nice guy, I said. So fucking naive that I wish I would have reached through a time portal and smacked myself right in the face. Yeah, she insisted. That's how he gets your guard down. Then he gets some smoke into you. And then... She didn't have to say anything else. I knew that I didn't want to ever be around him ever again. To think how close we might have come to that one time. What if one of us had passed out? What if both of us had passed out? I try not to sit on the what ifs. It's a recipe for anxiety. In my experience, it is anyways. But learning from the what ifs is a completely different story. Learning from them is a crucial point. After I had graduated, he reappeared. I guess he had gotten a whiff of me turning 18 years old and decided to try once again to be a nice guy to me. He and I talked over some text messages. It seemed as though he had changed quite a bit, really grown as a person, and chilled out a bit. We went to the park a few times and sat on the grass. We just talked. It was nice. Then he tried to put the moves right on me. Mind you, he was a lot more subtle. I rejected him because I had a boyfriend of 2 years at this point. He, of course, was not changed nearly as much as I wanted to give him credit for. He acted like a piss baby once again, and then he screwed off out of my life for another couple of years. The difference here was, I didn't put myself in the position that I felt unsafe in. I didn't hang out with him anywhere other than a public place in broad daylight, and never had more than 1 or 2 puffs when I was out, especially when I was alone with him. I had told A about what had happened. She informed me that he had caught wind of her telling people that rumor, and then he threatened her. Long story short, there was a restraining order put in place, and he was banned from ever contacting her. I wish that I would thought of to do that. A few more years later, I was in another long-term relationship, and he reached out to me once again. His dad just died, and he was struggling. Google searched some information about his dad, and he in fact just passed on. I decided to try and just be a supportive person, taking my safety into my own consideration, of course. We went for walks here and there, talked, smoked the occasional J. Then it seemed like we were actually on the road to being friends once again. Your girl was a bit naive at this time, I know. Just when things were looking really good, the weirdness started to surface again. I mentioned to him that my boyfriend at the time and I had moved in together, and he'd given me quite a scare the other day. HP cuts me off mid-sentence and then asks, "What, you got pregnant? Or is it a pregnancy scare?" "No, a scare with his allergies." He has peanut allergies, and said something about his throat feeling tight and kind of itchy. Oh, he interrupted once again. Any interest he had in the conversation was now gone. Well, I'm glad that it turned out to just be nothing. I didn't think anything of this. Although it really hadn't turned out to be nothing. I just decided that I didn't really want to retell the story of how I had to rush him to the hospital after stabbing him in the thigh with his EpiPen. A little while later, I was set to give him a ride to his job. I texted him about an hour prior to me showing up. Nothing special, just good morning, get ready for later. I'll be there in about 45 to pick you up. He responded with the nastiest, unfortunately, the most high-def photo that I ever seen of a crappy flip phone, of a big honking boner, and him saying, sure, I might need help dealing with this first, though. I was disgusted. I texted him back and told him to find another ride for work. He immediately had called me, apologizing, and then promising that it was meant for somebody else. He begged me to still help him out, because it was his first day, and if he was late, he would lose his new job. I told him okay, but don't do any more of that, or your ass is walking there. I arrived to pick him up. He acted like nothing had happened, which in hindsight might have helped ease that awkwardness that we had. He managed to act normal. Asked me if I could pick him up afterwards, probably around 10 o'clock. I worked shift at work at this point, and wouldn't be getting out until probably around 11, so I tried to insinuate that it was an inconvenience for me. He said that he would make his way to my work and wait for me to finish. I had already worked a morning shift by this point, so I was desperate to just go home and take my nap. Fine, I told him. He lit up, and then tried to suggest that he could help me finish up at the end of my shift. I work at a retirement lodge. That's not going to happen, I told him. Point blank. Oh, but I love elderly. I like to think that I am an old soul, he bragged. Well, be out of there in a flash. No, you're not getting this, I impatiently had explained. You need a certification and training to do the job that I have, and even before any of that, you have to pass not only a criminal background check, but also a vulnerable sector check in order to work at this job. Bringing you in and doing what you suggested would cost me my job. And I know that I would get at least one violation, and could result in charges for both of us. No, not gonna happen. He looked confused. What's this sector check? A common question, although it's a pretty self-explanatory. It's another criminal background check that they do. It's to check for crimes committed against any seniors, children, people with mental or physical limitations. Anybody who is vulnerable. It's basically exactly what it sounds like. I looked over the road to his face, and he had on a really worried expression. Yeah, maybe that's not exactly the place for me then. He laughed at this nervously. I was tired and cranky, and I just wanted him out of my car right at that moment. That it hadn't even registered how creepy that was. I dropped him off, went home, and then I had my nap. I was finishing up my shift at the old folks' home. I noticed a familiar voice in the coffee lounge area. Lots of voices sound familiar here, but this one is not one that I am used to hearing around here. I instantly got pissed off when I realized that it was his voice. He had totally disregarded everything that I had said to him, and knowingly risked my job, because he wanted to show me what an old soul he was. He was sitting with a couple of the residents, sipping tea and chatting with them like he had known them for many years. The residents that he was speaking to had turned to me and said, "Your boyfriend is pretty charming." He looked directly at me with a nervous smile. I swear to God, I probably had smoke coming out of all of my ears. I looked at my client with the friendly, gentle face I put on for them, and then said, "Actually, he's not my boyfriend. He is just a friend. My boyfriend would know better. Oh, and to think about it, any friend of mine would know better than to cost me my job." My gaze had shifted over to him, who could now tell that I was pissed off when my friendly face had disappeared. "Time to go," I told him sharply. He tried to open up the driver's side door for me. I told him to get the fuck out of my way. Get the fuck in my car, buckle up, and shut the fuck up. He did as he was told. For once in his life. He started trying to apologize, and for once I was the one who had cut him off mid-sentence. You're not sorry. You knew exactly why you weren't supposed to be there. I explained it to you very clearly. You'd better hope that I don't get a call from my supervisor about this. He tried to, I guess, ease some of my worries. He said it'll be okay. If you want, I can just talk to him and clear everything up. Are you fucking kidding me? I had screamed at him. The only thing that you can do is to not fucking do anything. Nothing you do will ever fix this. We drove in silence for a few more minutes. When we arrived at his house, he said that I had a surprise for you. Come in and see. I snapped back at him. It's now 11:30, and I have to get up at 5 to go be at work at 6 tomorrow morning. I'm going home and I'm going to bed. But he insisted, please. It's to thank you for your helping me with a ride today. It's the least that I can do after today. He actually sounded like he understood that he had screwed up, and genuinely wanted to do something nice for me. So sleepless, dumbass me said, okay, I'll come in for just a minute, but I really need to get home. A smile had stretched across his mug, and he said, I promise, you won't regret this. I walked into his apartment right behind me, and he told me to just wait a minute. I agreed, but gently reminded him again to be quick, as I need to go home, and I need my sleep. He went to his bedroom. I could hear him moving around. I waited probably about 15 minutes before he opens up the door a crack and calls me to come see it. I was starting to fall asleep standing up. I admit that my judgment was not the best at this moment. I shuffled over to peek into his room. Remember how I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and trust that he just wanted to do something nice for me, and had maybe even finally taken the hint that I would never, ever date him? Yeah, well, guess what? I was wrong. I peeked into the room, and to see him on his bed, in his silk robe which was open up at the front, with that same greasy weasel from the photo that he had texted me hanging out, candles lit, some cheesy Barry White music playing, and a disco ball that was hanging directly from the ceiling. I just looked at him in his stupid face, asked him what the hell are you doing? He smirked and said, I'm paying you back. You look like you could use a massage. Why don't you come and get comfy? Change into this. He held out a matching silk robe. I'll start at your head, and after a couple of hours, maybe I'll get to your toes. All this was said in what I'm guessing was his most flirtatious, seductive, and irresistible voice. I was so done by this point that I just laughed. I'm going home, dude. Don't contact me ever again. And if you know what's good for you, don't you fucking dare show up at my work ever again. He didn't seem to hear me. See how stressed you are? I'm going to help you relax, and I'll make you feel so good. He said all this just as confident as before. Your boyfriend doesn't have to know. This can be our secret. Who wants to be with a guy who gets laid out by a Reese's cup anyways? I then walked up to him, put my face about 5 inches from his. I looked him in the eyes and told him, this friendship is over now. You have never been my friend. I see that now. You've never, ever been a friend, and all you've ever been is a predator. Now leave me alone. Don't contact me again. I'm not exactly sure what he thought about what would happen, but he reached up, grabbed my tits, and then blurted out, I'll start here. Every woman loves having their tits rubbed. Just let me give you this massage, and it'll be... My hands reached faster than my brain did, and I backhanded him really hard. I literally had pimp-handed him in the face. You ever seen a blonde girl in Hello Kitty scrubs backhand somebody? I imagined that it would definitely be a sight to behold. I went home, blocked his number from which he had sent me numerous text messages. I didn't bother to read any of them, and then I went to sleep. There was one last incident over Facebook, which was pretty hilarious. I had forgotten to delete him. A couple of days later, I had made a post about being discouraged about something or other, and this douchebag decides that he would comment, sounds like your boyfriend just isn't doing his job. He needs to do better for you. It turned into an argument of me telling him to mind his own fucking business, and nobody had asked him. To him whining and complaining about, well, you never text me anymore, blah blah. Why don't you text me first for a change, dude? I decided to be really honest. I replied to him with, well, maybe it's because what I got the last time I texted you the first time, and included the dick pic that he had sent me, but was meant for somebody else. My friend who had commented on that post ganged up on him and told him that he was a disgusting dude, and it was no wonder that I didn't want to be anywhere near him. He blocked me, and that's where that ended. He tried chatting me a couple of times since then, but whenever his stupid name just shows up in my messages, I delete it and then block him once again. He seems to follow the Jeepers Creepers formula of every so-and-so years, it wakes up, then it's time for it to do whatever. It's usually about 3 to 4 years that he tries to befriend me once again, and I think it's getting to be about that time again.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.